everyone, welcome back to Twisted Talks. I'm Josh.
I'm Tanya.
And this week is Tanya's time to shine with a case. So, off you go.
Off I go.
Off you go.
Off I go.
Get the fuck out of the car and off you go.
Fine.
She's still there. Anyway.
So the topic...
Yeah, imagine, get the fuck out of your own car.
Yeah, I'll just walk home, it's fine. So the topic of today's Twisted Talk is the abduction of Elizabeth Smart. Now, I probably will refer to her as Elizabeth Short every now and then because my last case was Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, and I did save this as Elizabeth Short. But it is Elizabeth Smart. This case does have a trigger warning for sexual assault against a minor. So if that's something that you don't want to hear, something you're not comfortable with, off you go. You'll find one that you're more comfortable with. Hopefully. If not, this podcast
is not for you.
This is not the one. This is not the one.
You might be okay with the alien ones.
Yeah.
So check out the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, or maybe the Titanic or something.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth Ann Smart was born on November 3rd, 1987. She was born to parents Edward and Lois Smart, and Elizabeth is the second of 6 children. And the family were, and maybe still are, I'm not sure, devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Oh.
That's Mormon, isn't it? I should know that. I know I have it somewhere in my research. So Elizabeth was born in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah, then it probably is Mormon, yeah. I'm pretty sure it is.
One of Josh's favourite places. Her father, Edward, was a very successful real estate developer, and her mother, Lois, was a homemaker. Elizabeth, as a child, has been described as a kind, smart, shy and obedient child who was passionate about playing the harp. She began playing it when she was 5 years old and practiced for endless hours each day. She really committed, from a young age, she was really committed to being good at the harp and learning the harp.
What a nice thing to learn, though. It's something different as well. I wouldn't have the patience. The Mormons and Latter-day Saints difference. They would be Mormons who did not go west and settle in Utah, and they're quite different theologically. But logically, all followers of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are technically Mormons, but not all Mormons are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
An offshoot church. So she practiced for endless hours each day, which led to her being asked to perform as a harpist at local weddings and funerals by the time she reached middle school. So that's like primary school here.
Is it?
It would be like late primary school.
Oh my god. Very good though, either way.
Yeah, and she was also known to take part in an annual concert that took place in the fall or autumn at the Capitol Rotunda in Salt Lake City. Elizabeth also loved horses and was a skilled equestrian and distance runner.
The Capitol is lovely. It would be so nice to play there.
Yeah, and she was doing this from a young age.
Yeah, no, the Capitol, I went to the Capitol in Salt Lake City.
Oh, did you? Very nice.
It's very bougie, very pretty.
Very bougie. So she also trained as a distance runner, and she trained in the hopes of competing in cross-country racing when she moved on to high school. So all in all, she was a very talented, very motivated and very level-headed child, which I cannot relate to. I myself was absolute chaos personified at that age, and so was Josh. So was Josh, I can confirm.
Just in different ways,
We were gremlins.
But,
we were gremlins.
Undiagnosed illness, I guess.
Absolute gremlins. On June 4th, 2002, then 14-year-old Elizabeth attended an end-of-year awards ceremony at her school with her family. She won several awards for her academic achievements and her fitness achievements. The family celebrated her, and then they all went home to bed. In the early hours of the morning, Elizabeth was woken by a man holding a knife to her throat, and he ordered her to get up out of her bed, whispering to her, "I have a knife to your neck. Don't make a sound. Get out of bed and come with me, or I will kill you and your family." He only stopped for a brief moment to allow her to put on some shoes. So kind, so thoughtful.
Yes.
Now, Elizabeth shared a room with her younger sister, Mary Catherine. And Mary Catherine was also startled awake by the man's presence, though she pretended to remain asleep.
What age was she at this point again?
Elizabeth?
Yeah.
14.
14.
Now, sources vary. I have seen some sources say that the man also threatened Mary Catherine.
Okay.
But the majority of sources say that she pretended to be asleep. Mary Catherine would later speak of the incident saying, quote, "I stayed in bed. I was scared. I couldn't do anything. I was just shocked, petrified. I didn't know what to do, knowing someone had come into my bedroom and taken my sister."
Understandable.
I feel like this is a very natural reaction for
And like,
anyone.
what age was she again?
She was 9.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? What are you supposed to realistically do at 9?
So I feel like this is a very natural
Especially if she'd
reaction for
woken
anyone,
up in
especially for a
time to
child.
hear the threat about "I'll kill your family."
Yeah.
Because if she was awake to hear that, then obviously you're
That's
not
going
going
to
to
put
move.
more fear in her.
Yeah.
I think Mary Catherine was 9 years old at this time, and I personally just cannot imagine the fear that would have like gone through her little body at that time.
I think I'd literally have simply passed away.
Yeah, honestly. So she stayed in bed for a while. Now, I believe she actually, because this man like just walked out the front door with Elizabeth. Like, he entered. I think I have it somewhere later. But basically, he cut through the screen on the window. You know how a lot of Americans have the screens?
Yeah. Most houses do. I wish we had them here.
Cut through the screen on the window, climbed in, abducted Elizabeth, maybe potentially threatened Mary Catherine, and then walked Elizabeth out the front door.
Yeah.
So Mary Catherine, I believe, initially got out of bed and went to go to her parents' room, but saw the man outside with Elizabeth as she was passing her brother's room, so she ran back to her room in fear.
Yeah.
And she stayed there for maybe 2 hours and then went to her parents' room to tell them what had happened. They initially believed that she had had a nightmare until they went into the bedroom and saw the screen and realised that Elizabeth was missing.
I'm not being funny. I know obviously kids have nightmares, but the child, even if the child had a nightmare, they're in the same room.
Yeah.
The child is going to know when they wake up from the nightmare if their sister's there or not.
Exactly. So at this point, Elizabeth's abductor had taken her from the house and made her hike with him up foothills that were behind her home until they reached a campsite that was kind of not concealed but kind of well hidden in the mountainside.
Yeah.
And this is where the abductor's wife was waiting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the man who had abducted Elizabeth was Brian David Mitchell, and his wife was Wanda Eileen Barsey. Elizabeth had actually recognised Brian Mitchell. They had met in the fall, or autumn again, of 2001, when Elizabeth and her mother, Lois, had come across him panhandling in downtown Salt Lake City.
What's panhandling?
Begging.
Oh, okay.
Lois had given him $5 and offered him a job working on the roof of the family house. Brian fully believed that he was a prophet called Emmanuel, and so he introduced himself as Emmanuel. And at that time, he was clean shaven, whereas by the point of abduction, he had a scraggly beard and he'd grown out his hair.
He's a bit haggard.
Yeah, a bit haggard, but Elizabeth did still recognise him.
Actually, really nothing to do with it, so I'm
on.
only going to really quickly say, because I don't want to go on a tangent.
Go on,
But the description of haggard, is that why in Harry Potter Hagrid's name is Hagrid? Because he always looks haggard.
It very well could be, but in Harry Potter, his name is actually Rubius.
I like my
He's
theory better.
Rubius Hagrid.
Okay.
Everyone just calls him Hagrid for some reason.
Hagrid.
It's kind
Anyway.
of like, they just call it's like with Malfoy, they just call him Malfoy. but
It's
his
a
name is
very
Draco.
surname thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Potter.
Now, the reason that Brian Mitchell had... Now, I will be referring to him as Mitchell through this, even though he was going by Emmanuel at this point. The reason that Mitchell had kidnapped Elizabeth is because, as I said, he believed he was a Mormon prophet named Emmanuel and that he was having prophetic visions. He also believed that he needed to collect 7 child brides. Standard.
Yeah.
Makes sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a prophet. I'm having prophetic visions.
But does he not realise he's a prophet of... Well, not he is, like, but he claims, or delusionally thought, he was a prophet of Mormonism, and I don't think they have 7 wives.
Don't think so.
No.
Don't think so.
I mean, not legally anyway.
So, just a bit of background information on Brian Mitchell. Brian... Sorry, my brain was on pause mode there for a second. Brian Mitchell was born on October 18th, 1953 in Salt Lake City, Utah, to a Mormon family. And it's said that he began to show troubling tendencies from an early age. He has been described as showing, quote, cruel and sadistic behaviour to his mother and his 5 siblings, and left home when he was 16 due to a shoving incident with his mother. That same year, he was arrested for exposing himself to an 8-year-old girl and asking her to touch him.
Oh.
As an adult, Mitchell continued to develop a pattern of dysfunctional relationships. He had 2 children with his first wife, Karen, and when their marriage broke down in 1977, he kidnapped them.
Oh, parental kidnap.
Yep. Kidnapped them, took them to New Hampshire and joined a Hare Krishna commune. Now, Hare Krishna is a type of monotheistic Hinduism, with monotheistic being the belief that there is only one God.
Yeah.
So in this case, they only believe in the god Krishna.
Yeah.
Hare...
It's like with Christianity and Catholicism though as well. It's like God is God, that's it.
Yeah. Now, a few years later in 1983, bear in mind, okay, this man went to the effort of kidnapping his 2 kids, moving them to New Hampshire, hiding them away in a commune, and then in 1983, he went on to give the 2 children up into foster care because he returned to Utah and married his second wife, Debbie.
Could you not just give them back to their mother?
Parent of
Well, realistically, could you just not kidnap them in the first place? But would you not just like...
Like, to me, it just seems like it was very much...
Return,
a power
pop
play.
him in a taxi, pay the taxi driver in advance, or even just tell the taxi driver where and make the mother end up paying when they show up.
Yeah. But it just seems to me like it was very much a power play because the marriage broke down. He decided, I'm taking the kids. And then when he decided he didn't want the kids anymore, he was like, I'm going to put them in foster care. Because he...
But I want to know as well...
would not give them back to the mother.
Like, how did he even get away with putting them into foster care in the sense of, like... How did he do that without a red flag raising the fact that they were kidnapped?
I would assume because it was across state lines.
Yeah, but that's even worse because then the FBI should be involved.
Yeah,
so it should
true.
pop a red flag even faster.
I actually couldn't find much information on it, but...
It's just weird how he was just able to pop them into the foster care system.
My theory would be that he just left them somewhere. Or that he just walked them into like a child welfare office.
And it walked out, yeah. Must have. Sure.
So the second marriage is where Mitchell's cruelty really began to show. He knew that Debbie was terrified of mice.
Oh, Lord.
And he once brought her a mouse in a jar. On another...
Poor mouse.
It gets worse, Josh. On another occasion, on another occasion, he placed 50 dead mice on a cookie sheet and left them in the oven to scare Debbie. Now, I want to know where he got 50 dead mice. That's a large number of dead mice.
I hope they got a new oven.
And also, like, what kind of psychopath just...
Like, that's a lot of effort
because
to gather 50 dead mice.
Like, knowing that your wife is afraid of mice, just deciding, I'm going to put 50 dead mice.
Yeah, but you know what, when you're younger and you've always got that one prick that fucking holds a spider in their hands and chases you.
Oh my God, when I worked in Cork, one of the kids legitimately chased me around with a live spider to the point I had to lock myself between 2 doors.
Yeah.
And like hold the door. And I was like, get it away from me. Get it away from me.
But like, at least in that situation, it's a child.
And he was like 7.
But like, I mean, like, when we were younger, I mean, even like when you're sometime in the early teenagers, when you do know better, but people still did it anyway.
And you've always got
and
that
sometimes
one weirdo.
it's adults. I experienced that as a child with adults before.
I think I've definitely experienced something along those lines with adults as well. Like, not with my parents.
But like, I was a
with,
child, they were
like,
an adult.
Uncles. Like, I remember one of my uncles chasing me with a spider.
I actually can't remember because I have a feeling I know who, but I don't want to say because I'm not entirely sure. And like, yeah, I don't mind naming and shaming, but I'm not going to name in case I'm
wrong.
You
don't
know,
want to falsely
I feel like it's I feel like it's like partially repressed memories because that was traumatic for me.
Okay, go on.
No, the spider chasing, so that's
yeah.
why I can't remember specifically which one it was or whether it was both.
You can tell me after.
Yeah.
I'll tell you if it seems like it's legit. So the marriage, so Mitchell's marriage to Debbie lasted 2 years before they divorced in 1985, with claims that Mitchell had abused Debbie's children. Now, they did not have children together, but...
She had already had children.
Yeah. Now, this in turn led to Mitchell marrying his third wife, Wanda Barzy. And it was around this time that he began to believe that he was the Mormon prophet Emmanuel. Wanda's daughter, Lori, would go on to say that Mitchell began to kiss her and hold her in the wrong way when he went to live with the family in 1986 while she was 12 years old. 12.
Wait, who is he doing that to?
her daughter, Wanda's daughter, his third wife. So this would be his stepdaughter. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. It's also said, and there's a big trigger warning here.
Okay.
I don't even want to say it. That Mitchell shot the family dog in front of Laurie and her siblings and tricked her into eating her own pet rabbit. Like, that is trauma. That is trauma. Like, he basically fed her dinner and then afterwards was like, yeah, that was actually your pet rabbit. I would immediately, like, I'm already a vegetarian, but immediately I would go vegetarian. And by the time...
Yeah, see, whereas I'm like, to me, that's like, it's the psychological part of it to me that's shocking, because to me, like, the whole eating a rabbit's no different to eating a cow to me. Do you know what I mean?
But it's the fact that it was her pet.
But, like, that's what I mean by the psychological factor.
So all in all, fucked up.
Yeah, that's awful.
Absolutely fucked up. So by the time she was 15, Laurie had made the decision to run away from home to escape Mitchell. Now, in and around April 2002, Mitchell grew out his hair and his beard and started wearing religious robes. And he also publicly announced that he was destined to be a king with 7 child brides.
The US don't even have kings.
No.
They never have.
No, I don't think
have
they ever have.
And if they have, it's a very, 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 very,
long time
very,
ago,
very
before
long
colonization.
time. Yeah.
Like pre-white people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 7 child brides, because he's going to be a king. And he believed that these 7 child brides, I'm not even going to call them wives, would help him to battle and defeat the Antichrist. And this was when the Mormon Church began the process of excommunicating him.
That sounds like a very good idea.
Shit was getting wild, and they were
You don't want to be, you don't want that associated with your religion or your church.
No, absolutely not. Excuse me.
It's different, you know.
He's differently different.
You know, it's not like Catholicism and Christianity where the paedophiles get to keep their job and get it covered up and brushed under a rug.
Yeah, they were like, you crazy.
They were like, we're going to excommunicate. I was like, yeah, good, do.
Now, jumping back to the time of Elizabeth's kidnapping, Mitchell had brought her to a campsite where Wanda was waiting. And at this point, they conducted a quote-unquote marriage ceremony with Wanda as the officiate.
Oh God, Mother of the Year award goes to.
Yeah, so Elizabeth would go on to say that in the beginning, she kind of hoped that Wanda would be an ally of sorts to her because she was a woman, Elizabeth was a girl. And then she came to realise that oh my God, Wanda was one of the most evil people she would ever meet.
Yeah.
So Wanda was the officiate at this wedding. And this was in order to make Elizabeth Mitchell's first child bride. Now, Mitchell referred to himself as Emmanuel, as I've said, referred to Wanda as Hephzibah. Okay. And the two renamed Elizabeth as Sheerjashub. I'm going to say, after the sham marriage. It was at this point that Elizabeth's true torture would begin. Mitchell tied her between 2 trees with cables and began raping her on a daily basis. He told her that she was expressly forbidden from speaking about her family and would force her to drink alcohol, take drugs, and watch pornography. Now, the pornography seems to be a common thing with kidnappers, because I know in the Cara Robinson case,
I feel like it's because of their age, they don't know any of that, so that's the way to be, like, showing them.
Very gross.
Yeah,
very that.
That's the only thing I can think of, but obviously they're not logical-minded people.
No.
But that's the only logical thing I can put to it.
Yeah.
Obviously still wrong, but it's the only sense I could make.
It's got like a logical twist in their mind.
Yeah. But that might not even be it, like.
Yeah,
that's just
it could just be a sick, depraved thing for them.
For no
something
good reason,
that they get their rocks off to. Now, Mitchell once made Elizabeth drink to the point of vomiting before making her lie face down in her vomit.
Lovely. He
would also tell her sexually explicit things like, I'm going to fuck your eyes out.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, everything is disgusting.
Yeah.
But that's...
Like, he really took this 14-year-old from her home and was like, I'm going to make you my wife. I'm going to sexually abuse you. I'm going to force you to ingest drugs and alcohol against your will. I'm going to force you to watch sexually explicit content against your will. And there's nothing you can do about it. Just a very depraved individual, really. Which they all are. Everyone we cover really is just fucked up in the fucking head. Now, the sexual assaults... this bit. The sexual assaults stopped very briefly when Wanda became jealous of how much time Mitchell would spend with Elizabeth. She said to him, quote, "All you do is lust after her." Which, I'm sorry now, but you really need to be a special type of disgusting and depraved to be jealous of your husband raping a 14-year-old girl on a daily basis. Like, how can you sit there knowing that he is literally raping a child, a teenage girl, and feel jealousy for that?
Like, I'm like, because she's clearly not right in the head either. But, like, if someone for some reason was, like, the only thing I can think of, it's like, you're not giving me attention and doing things with me, but you're doing it with a child.
It's giving,
do you know, that kind of way? But obviously she's, I don't know.
It's giving like the Ken and Barbie murderers, where just two very fucked up individuals happen to come together. Yeah. Or like Fred and Rosemary West. Yeah. Like, it's just, these people just have a knack for finding each other in the world and committing atrocities.
But unless, I'm assuming there's probably more to come, but so far I wouldn't put her on the same scale as Fred and Rose West.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't even put him on the same scale. Like, he's depraved, but he's a different level of depraved.
It's different, yeah. And like, there's just, yeah.
I'm really loving the word depraved today. Now, anyhow, Wanda demanded that Mitchell rotate between her and Elizabeth, but this didn't last very long.
Rotate?
Yeah. Elizabeth once fought back against Mitchell and bit his hand, and he responded to this by stating that he would make her miserable by never having sex with her again.
Oh God, poor me.
God forbid.
I thought you were trying to get her to not bite you.
God forbid you should stop raping her.
And to make it out that that's a punishment for her.
But obviously this was a lie, and he continued to rape her. Elizabeth would later say, quote, "Anything I showed resistance or hesitation to, he would turn to me and say, 'The Lord has commanded you to do this. You have to experience the lowest form of humanity to experience the highest.'" So he knows he's a massive piece of shit.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing is low.
He knows it's wrong. Now, over a month...
But somehow he still thinks it's God's work.
Yeah. Now, over a month after Elizabeth's abduction... So Elizabeth was abducted early June, and this is July 24th, 2002, same year. Mitchell attempted to abduct another young girl, and this was actually Elizabeth's cousin.
What are the odds?
However, this plan failed, as he woke Stephen Wright, Elizabeth's uncle, with a loud bang as he attempted to cut through the screen on the window. So it was the same methodology. Is that the right word? I'm going to say it is.
Method anyway, yeah.
And as well, Elizabeth's cousin was in her bed, and she saw a sharp object coming in and out through her window as he attempted to cut through the screen. The police were immediately called, but Mitchell escaped. Police were all the while desperately trying to find Elizabeth, but to no avail, never knowing that she was being held prisoner just 4 miles away from her home.
For God's sake.
I know, it's awful. Like, it is.
But I don't get like how, like, do you know when it's that fucking close? How do they not find someone? Like, do they not search ever within at least a 5-mile radius?
We'll touch on that. We'll kind of touch on that. So 2 days after the abduction...
If that wasp comes in the car, okay, never mind.
Oh, they keep coming into the car. It's really annoying. 2 days after Elizabeth's abduction, her father, Edward, had made a televised plea while police and the FBI launched a 3-state-wide search.
There we go.
He said, quote, if you can hear me, Elizabeth is the sweetest girl. She's an angel. Please let her go. Please. I mean, she doesn't do anything to anyone, and there's no reason that you should have her." And then he went on to say, "Elizabeth, if you're out there, we're doing everything we possibly can to help you. We love you. We want you to come home safely to us." Police also released a description of the man as given by Elizabeth's younger sister, Mary Catherine. Now, as it had been dark in the room, she had not seen his face, but she described him as a white man, standing around 5 feet 8 inches tall and wearing a white shirt and a white baseball cap. Hundreds of people within the community joined in the search for Elizabeth, and Salt Lake City Mayor at the time, Rocky Anderson, announced a $10,000 reward for information and vowed that they would do absolutely everything possible to find Elizabeth. During her time in the campsite near the mountainside, there were times when Elizabeth would hear search parties calling out to her, calling her name in the hopes that she would respond, but every time Mitchell would threaten that if she opened her mouth, he would duct tape it shut and kill anyone who came into the campsite. So obviously, out of fear, Elizabeth remained silent, because in her mind, she said that Mitchell seemed invincible, was the word she used.
Right.
Which, like, she's a 14-year-old
Of
girl.
course.
Another time, a search helicopter was hovering over the campsite, but Mitchell forced Elizabeth into the tent so she would not be seen. Now, in the early stages of the investigation, the police had considered a man named Richard Ricci.
Okay.
R-I-C-C-I, that's Ricci, isn't it? Or Ritchie.
R-I-C-C-I.
Ricci.
I would either say Ricky or Ricci.
I think it's Ricci, like Christina Ricci.
But anyway.
So Richard Ricci, they considered him a suspect as he had a history of drug use, had worked for the Smart family, and had been jailed on an unrelated prior parole violation as he had previously tried to kill a police officer while trying to escape from burglary. As you do.
Because that makes things better. That really helps your situation. I'm still just can't get over the fact that it's when it was.
The 2000s?
Yeah, like 2002, like.
Yeah.
It's not that long ago.
It's crazy, like, it's absolutely crazy.
What age was I? I was 4.5. Well,
Yeah.
4 and a bit.
Yeah, I was the same. Where was I? Yeah, sorry. So the police searched Richard Ricci's trailer, and they did find items from the Smart home inside, which did kind of give more credence to them that he was a potential suspect,
possibly the guy.
And this is when police started to theorise that Elizabeth had caught him in the act of burglarising the house, and as he was desperate not to go back to prison, he took her. Now, Mary Catherine would see Richard Ricci's face on television and adamantly deny that he was the one who abducted Elizabeth.
Right.
And Ricci would go on to die of a brain hemorrhage in prison in August 2002.
In prison for the burglary and attempted killing of the officer.
Yeah,
okay.
For the parole violation. Now, Mitchell would begin moving Elizabeth from place to place and would even bring her into Salt Lake City with a veil covering her face so that she wouldn't be recognised. And this did work. Like, this did work.
Okay.
And then as well, because she was so scared, she never cried out for help. She never, you know.
It was instilled into her life.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well, the fact that he had held her prisoner for so long, he kind of indoctrinated her to believe that she couldn't
how long?
ask for help. So I think he held her for a month before he started bringing her out in public.
Right.
At one point, he took her to California in search of another child bride, and he visited the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a hunting ground. It was here that he met a man named Vel Kimp, who invited Mitchell to dinner at his home. All these people inviting strangers to their home, it just gives me the fear.
Yeah.
It just gives me the fear. But anyway, I digress. So Vel Kimp invited Mitchell to dinner at his house to discuss the Mormon faith. It was during this dinner that Mitchell spotted a photo of a young girl on the family's piano, and he decided in that moment that she was his next bride. So later he returned to the house with the intent of, I suppose, using the same method of cutting through the screen, climbing in the bedroom window, and kidnapping the girl. However, luckily, when he attempted to break into the home, he was spooked by noises inside, and so he took off and he... What are you pointing at?
The cat.
Oh, the cat! But he didn't manage to successfully kidnap this girl, thankfully.
Yeah. I'm like, he's actually failing so many times. Oh, the cat is such a girl, yeah.
Oh my god, stunning. She's coming home with me.
But the fact that, like, he was unsuccessful, twice now?
Twice.
I'm like, how did he even manage to pull it off the first time at this point?
Luck. I think it was just pure and utter luck. And I suppose the first time he would have been at the Smart house a fair few times working on the roof.
Yeah.
So he would have had more of a knowledge of who's in the house,
when
the
they go
layout
to
of the
bed,
house, when
like
they go
that.
to bed. Whereas the second time, I think it was more opportunity and the
Yeah,
third time
trying
again,
to just go for it, whereas the first time, like, it was kind of a case of he would have known the family's routines and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
he had more of a chance of getting away with it, and he did for a while. Now, 4 months after Elizabeth's abduction, Mary Catherine had a light bulb moment.
Okay.
So she was idly flicking through her Guinness World Book of Records when it suddenly hit her. And I don't know what it was that triggered this for her in the Book of Records. I don't know if it was just one of those moments where you have like an epiphany.
Yeah.
But basically, Mary Catherine had always thought that she recognised the voice of the kidnapper.
I see where this is going.
And she just suddenly realised why. Something shifted in her brain and she realised why. So she immediately went to her father and told him that she believed it was Emmanuel, the homeless preacher that had worked on the family's roof, that had taken her sister. Immediately the family went straight to the police.
Yeah.
As you would. But police were initially reluctant to publicise him as a suspect. They told the Smart family that they would look for him and look into him, but not to go public with the information just yet, as they didn't want to scare him off.
Yeah.
But by this point, the family had had enough. Elizabeth had been missing for months. So Edward began working with a sketch artist to compose a likeness of Mitchell. And on February 3rd, 2003, which was July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, 8 months. 8 months after Elizabeth's abduction, the family held a press conference to release the sketch. And the sketch was also aired on an episode of... I should have written down the name of the show,
Dateline?
I believe. It wasn't Dateline, it was America's Most Wanted, I think.
Right.
Or something along those lines. I was fully sure I put it in, but the brain fog must have taken over. Now, this was probably the best thing the family could have actually done, because it got the sketch out to a wider audience, and it meant that Brian Mitchell's sister saw the episode. She saw the conference, and she immediately contacted the police to tell them that she believed Emmanuel was really her brother, Brian Mitchell. And this kind of really got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
You know, it got his face out there. Police had a name. They knew who they were looking for. And even though he was still slightly off the radar, it is ultimately what led to the case being resolved.
Yeah.
So, on March 12th, 2003, 9 months after Elizabeth was abducted and after 9 grueling months of captivity, abuse and sexual assault, a passerby on the street noticed and recognised Brian Mitchell from the episode of America's Most Wanted.
Yeah.
And Brian Mitchell was walking with Wanda and Elizabeth, who was wearing a veil, a wig and sunglasses. This passerby immediately notified the authorities, and they swarmed the area and arrested Brian and Wanda.
Mm-hmm. Thank God.
And at this point, Elizabeth was finally returned safely to her family.
I feel like they're very lucky that releasing the sketch went that way.
Mm-hmm. Because it could have gone the other way. And
because it could have gone the way as in murder her, get rid of her.
I think they were
find
lucky.
a different person.
I think they were lucky that...
But obviously he wasn't bothered, because surely he knew that sketch was going around.
I don't think it's that he wasn't bothered. I think it's that he was so off the grid. He didn't know the sketch was out there. He didn't know...
That's potential as well, that maybe didn't
that
watch
it was
TV or
televised,
anything like that. He wasn't a very bright criminal in the sense that, like, you know how, like,
No.
you'd hear of some of them where they're always watching things like Dateline and America's Most Wanted and programs like that.
Trying to keep up with things.
Keep up with things, make sure that, you know, there might be someone on them that's being shown as, you know, maybe to blame for crimes that they actually did,
Yeah.
or to make sure that their face isn't on it and things like that.
I think
but this fella's just...
I think he also was so set in this belief that he was,
That
a,
he was
prophet,
a prophet.
and that this was his destiny, and
Invincible,
that
basically, as far
that
as he
God
was
would look
concerned.
out for him and that he would not get caught.
Yeah.
Like, he just had an insane amount of hubris.
Yeah.
Now, the day after her return, Elizabeth's mother Lois said something to her that Elizabeth says stuck with her and helped her immensely in healing from the trauma that she had been through. So Lois said, quote, "Elizabeth, what this man has done is terrible. There aren't words to describe how wicked and evil he is. He's stolen 9 months of your life that you will never get back, but the best punishment you could give him is to be happy." And Elizabeth really internalised that.
Mm-hmm.
And just, healed so amazingly from everything she had been through. Like a couple of months later, she was back in school. She did really well in school. She went on to college. I'll touch more on where she's at now in her life at the end, but I'm just so impressed that, like...
Yeah, going back to school that fast alone is a feat.
Yeah, like at such a young age, she healed so well and so beautifully and went on to create such a beautiful, happy, extraordinary life for herself.
But I suppose, especially with younger ages and children,
they're more resilient, I
it
think.
always goes one way or the other. Like, they either do really, really, really well or really, really, really badly.
Yeah, and she was just fortunate that she had the resilience to do really, really well.
Yeah.
So in 2004 and 2005, both Wanda Barzey and Brian Mitchell were deemed unfit for trial due to delusions. And so the court case was put on hold while the two were
I can
sent
see
to
how
Utah.
what's Emmanuel's face?
Brian David Mitchell.
That cunt.
Brian David Mitchell. I said that so slowly. Brian David
Him,
Mitchell.
I can see him why
deluded.
he was on deluded, but I don't know why your one was.
Maybe it was like folie à deux.
Unless it was that,
But I don't think so. I think
she just seemed along for the ride, kind of a thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, she was just going with it.
I'm not disputing that he believed he was a prophet, but I think the way he took Elizabeth, the way he exerted control over her, Elizabeth herself has said he knew what he was doing and he knew that it was wrong.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that he said to her, you have to experience the lowest of humanity to experience the highest, he knew what he was doing was wrong.
Yeah, no, he clearly knew what he was doing was wrong, but for some reason he was deluded enough to think that's what God was telling him to do. It's wrong, but you have to do it because she has to learn what low is like.
Was fairly calculated in how he went about making it seem that he was more deluded than what he was during the trial.
Yeah, when he got caught,
So the court case was put on hold while the two were sent to the Utah State Hospital for psychological evaluation. Now, unfortunately, I actually couldn't find anything about what the outcome of the psychological evaluation was. I couldn't find whether either of them was diagnosed with anything.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that they were, due to something that I will say later. So it wouldn't be until March 5th, 2008 that a federal grand jury would indict Mitchell and Wanda on charges of interstate kidnapping and unlawful transportation of a minor across state lines. But in October of that year, when the state judge denied a request to forcibly medicate Mitchell, the case was sent to the federal court system. Now, on November 17th, 2009, Wanda Barzey pled guilty after formally admitting to her role in the abduction of Elizabeth Smart, and she addressed Elizabeth in the courtroom saying, quote, "I'm so sorry, Elizabeth, for all the pain and suffering I caused you and your family. It is my hope that you will be able to find it in your heart and forgive me." Go fuck yourself, Wanda. Disrespectfully, go fuck yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then on March 21st, 2010, so, like, the trial did get held up for a good few years.
Yeah.
So on May 21st...
Because what, when she was recovered, it was 2003?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah, so, like...
This is 7 years in the difference. But it was because...
What year was it?
2010 is when Wanda was sentenced. But it was because he would play on this whole insanity defence in the courtroom.
Yeah. And then I suppose you've got your defence lawyer as well telling you to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, okay, yeah, fair enough, this might be a certain way, but emphasise it.
Yeah. So on May 21st, 2010, Wanda Barzey was sentenced to 15 years in prison, but was released in 2018 under 5 years of federal supervised release after the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole decided that it had miscalculated the time she was required to serve in prison. Elizabeth was obviously and understandably infuriated by this decision, saying that it was incomprehensible how someone who had not cooperated with mental health evaluations or risk assessments could be released, but that she would not allow it to stop her from living her life. Now, Wanda did have to go on the sex offenders registry as well.
Okay.
But for some reason, she was able to live close to it, like a school, like an elementary school or a middle school.
Right.
Now, experts were divided on whether Mitchell was competent enough to stand trial, as he would frequently sing hymns in court, once yelled at a judge to repent. And I saw something as well about him feigning a fit in the courtroom.
As you do.
Yeah. But, yeah, this led to years and years of hearings regarding his level of competence. But on March 1st, 2010, the federal judge ruled that he was faking his mental illness, and the trial finally went ahead. Now, that's why I believe he wasn't diagnosed with anything, because the judge wouldn't have been able to claim or state that he was faking his mental illness had he been diagnosed with something.
True. But then again, they couldn't diagnose him anyway because he wouldn't cooperate with the evaluations.
I don't know if he cooperated or not. I know Wanda didn't.
Oh, okay.
Like, as I said, I couldn't find anything about his...
Yeah.
So, excuse me, the judge wrote, quote, "The evidence proves that Mitchell has the capacity to assist his counsel in his defence and the ability to behave appropriately in the courtroom." Mitchell's trial began on November 1st, 2010, and between November 8th and November 10th, Elizabeth gave her testimony on what she had experienced at Mitchell's hands, and she also recalled a time when she was almost rescued by a police officer in a library but was too terrified to ask for help. On December 10th, 2010, Mitchell's defence team's argument of insanity was rejected, and the jury found Mitchell guilty of kidnapping and unlawful transportation of a minor across state lines for sexual activity. And on May 25th, 2011, he was sentenced to life in prison. Now, I couldn't find any information on where he was sent to prison, or any verifiable information on where he was sent to prison. It seems that a lot of the information to do with him in prison is kind of being held back, if you get me.
Right.
Now, Elizabeth addressed Mitchell in court saying, quote, "I know that you know what you did was wrong. You took away 9 months of my life that can never be returned, but in this life or the next, you will have to be held responsible for those actions, and I hope you are ready for that when the time comes." I feel like that's a very powerful statement as well from someone so young. So she would have been 18 or 19, I think, at that point in time.
Yeah, still young. Like.
And she just addressed him with confidence and with power. Now, Elizabeth went on to heal and thrive in her life. She is now happily married, and on October 7th, 2013, she published her first memoir titled My Story. This was followed by a second book in March 2018 titled Where There's Hope, Healing, Moving Forward and Never Giving Up. Elizabeth is a mother now. I believe she has 2 children. And she has gone on to become an advocate for victims of trauma. And in 2011, she launched the Elizabeth Smart Foundation with the goal of empowering children and providing resources and trauma supports for victims and their families. In the same year, she was also named a special correspondent for ABC News to report on missing persons and child abduction cases. So really, she did not let this hold her back in any way.
Yeah.
She went on, healed herself, and, as I said, built a beautiful life for herself. And I love these cases where you see the victim just go on and thrive in spite of everything
they've been through and experienced.
everything that's happened to them. And it does, obviously what happened to them is horrible, but it just makes me happy to see them, to know that they're doing
coming out the other
well
side
in
of
life.
it as much as they can.
Exactly. And it's very awe-inspiring. It's amazing. Like, I feel like a fair few of the cases that we have covered kind of shows the strength and resilience of the human spirit and the strength and resilience of humans, and how not everyone, I understand, like, it's an incredibly difficult process to heal from trauma, no matter what level of trauma you've experienced. But it always just amazes me how people can power through and come out the other side.
Yeah, 100%.
And that is the case of Elizabeth Smart, not Elizabeth Short. Elizabeth Smart.
But if you want to listen to the case of Elizabeth Short, that's
up too. Jinx.
But I was going to say something, but I actually can't remember what it was. So it's obviously not important.
Must have been a lie.
Must have been a lie. But yeah, I still can't believe that your one is out of prison.
Yeah, like, that did blow my mind. Like, they just decided, we miscalculated.
But then again, I'm also like, I suppose, whether it was self-preservation or not, she testified against him. And I suppose...
No, she didn't testify against him. Well, she admitted to her role.
Yeah. No,
I suppose to a certain extent that would include
like
testifying against him, and
her testimony would have helped
done,
specify everything, and it is considered testifying against someone.
Yeah.
But like, in terms of her role in it, I suppose, was much smaller than his.
Yeah, like,
in terms
as
of,
far
she
as
was
I know,
almost basically just an accomplice. She wasn't actually really actively doing
Yeah,
anything.
she just
but she
let it
also
happen.
wasn't actively doing anything to stop it or help.
Yeah, she let it happen and got jealous.
So I suppose 15 years. I don't know. She didn't do the 15 years.
No, she
Because she was what,
did.
2018. She was out.
She did 8 years.
So half the sentence essentially.
Yeah, she did 7 or 8 years, which I still think is a bit ridiculous, but it is what it is. And look, at least Elizabeth was at a point in her life where she was strong enough to not let it affect her life.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that is the end of this week's case, guys.
And once again, thank you for listening. Again, send case suggestions to the Insta.
Yous are amazing.
If you know us personally, you can always message us.
And I think I know I mentioned the Ken and Barbie killers and Fred and Rosemary West, so I think I might cover one of them for my next solo case. I'm not going to specify which one. I like to keep you guessing. But I'm going to put it in my notes because
So otherwise you'll
very
be
forgetful.
trying to remember what you were trying to keep people guessing. But yes, so with all that, once again, thanks for listening, guys. Hope you have an amazing week. And
we love you.
Love you, stay safe, love and light, and goodbye.
Bye.
Ciao.